I think public relations is probably the hardest place to begin with this conversation of actually being able to track A, measure B, and then really analyze C. And we have ways of doing this, but rather than focus on return on investment, I want to shift a little bit in the way, and I'm still going to answer this question, but I want to shift a little bit in the way that the public relations industry, in some cases, actually measures some of this. And this is called for us, which is a trademark that we own at NINICO. It's called return on involvement. And return on involvement for us means a lot of different things. And I'll get to unpack some of that with you today. But chief among them, it means how are we involved in integrating all of these pieces? Because so often, whether you are in-house at corporate side or on the agency side, working to drive some of these opportunities for your clients, you're getting these questions all the time. Well, what are we going to send to the client, right? What's the deliverable, right? Really, what's the goal? And so if we can unpack that and measure it in a way that says these marketing and messaging, processes that we're building out are connected to your business development goals, or if you're on the agency side, to your clients' business development goals, now we're getting involved in some different spaces. And the way we measure some of that is certainly by deploying some technology. Absolutely, the PR space, one of the many beautiful functions of the marketing communications industry does have amazing AI out there. And so we absolutely deploy some of that. We're able to engage with journalists in real time, but we're also able to measure the success of the editorial coverage that we're securing for our clients and then be able to pass that along to our clients as well. Return on involvement, though, also means something else. And this means, for us, it means balancing what we're doing with the digital footprint for our clients with what we're doing offline, and being able to showcase that balance to our clients and sell that brand promise in the marketplace, whatever industry they're in, doesn't matter, is really important. And that means, for us, that means getting involved in your local community, effectively engaging with your chambers of commerce or your local Rotary Club or whatever that may be, because that brand promise gets delivered in a very human way in those instances. And while you can't track it as well as you can track some other opportunities that Summit has been talking about, we believe that that is just as valuable, if not more, because it's human to human, it's person to person, right? And so that return on involvement is really showcased in a thoughtful and I would say meaningful way. So for us, it's not either or. It's got to be, in public relations, it's got to be this really unique balance. And I would say, there are some of us here at this conference who are on the agency side, and then there are also others who are on the corporate side. I think the corporate folks do it really well for their own brand. I think I would say the agency industry, the industry sector, does a really poor job of doing it for themselves, right? And so we're so focused, close to 100% of the day, Monday through Friday, how are we driving success for our clients? And that's what the conversation is. And that's how we drive success internally on the agency side. And I'm seeing some heads nod out there. So I know you are understanding what I'm talking about. I would challenge the agency sector of the Marcom space to think bigger and bolder and better about their own agency brand and what you do to move the needle successfully for your clients, you begin next year to do for yourself as well. I would say education. I think it must start with education. I think most of the clients we've engaged with and had the blessing of working with over the past decade plus, if they've not worked with an agency partner before, they really see an agency as a vendor. And we are not a vendor. In fact, when we are seen as a vendor, we have been known to walk away from clients and actually terminate those relationships because it wasn't the kind of relationship that we understood it to be going in. We look for long-term clients who want to obtain their big marketing challenges with sound strategic advice and see their agency as a strategic business partner, because not only do we understand their tough marketing goals and serve that goal, but B, we fundamentally understand their business. Forget marketing for a second. And I would say this to all agency leaders at the conference today. Go back and really do a deeper dive into your client base, your client family, and treat them differently. Don't treat them as a marketing project or a challenge, but treat them as a business as a whole. And if you can go in and understand how their revenue is driven and their big business challenges, again, not even marketing, but just their business, right, in and of itself, you're going to start to see how you deliver success for them takes on a very different method or strategy or opportunity, because now you're starting to think like you are actually in the weeds with them every day, right? So stop thinking of yourself as a vendor to A, B, or C, and start thinking of yourself as a strategic business partner. And I would say, to answer part of that question, part of the goal is being able to deliver that data back to the client. And so whatever, right, that's how we get those renewals. That's how they understand, that is actually moving the needle, right? And some of it, Sumit talks about the inbound. And I think while the inbound happening organically is important, PR can actually drive some of that inbound. So rather than pulling in a PR agency partner too late, as I would say, to just sort of talk about what's happening, messaging what's happening that's good and successful in the company after the inbound happens, in my opinion, that's too late. Bring an agency to the table early on and enjoy those conversations with that agency partner to encourage more inbound, right? The third-party validation in the marketplace for a brand or a business decision maker being quoted somewhere, having a feature profile by, pick your publication of choice, and your publicists or your strategists pitching that content and securing that editorial coverage, that can actually drive the inbound. So there's a little bit of a shift that I would encourage businesses and business decision makers to make, of pulling people in who are smart in this marketing space to encourage them to have some of that conversation earlier. We haven't talked a lot about clean data, right, versus data that isn't actually accurate, right? One of the clean or not so clean data that our clients still ask for, that I'm not sure why we haven't challenged them to think differently about that. I think I would encourage all agencies to challenge their clients on this. But AVE, right? I mean, this data point around advertising value equivalence, and in public relations or on a marketing campaign, if I had spent $50,000 on that campaign, show me what it actually was in terms of return, right? Organic return. Well, the reality is that the American Marketing Association, the Public Relations Society of America, and AAF, the American Advertising Federation, have all come out against AVE. And so there are better ways to do this now. So part of talking about data and metrics and KPIs here today at this conference is also thinking bigger and bolder and better around how we are educating the industry at large, but also our client base, saying, I realize that you're asking for that data point, and I realize why you're asking for that data point, but I'm going to reposition that conversation and show you data that is actually clean, data that actually backs up the work that went into that campaign. And the final thing I'll say about that, this conversation that we're having right now, sort of organically happening, I love it on stage right now, around this, when we see data not measuring up to what we thought it should be, where it really ought to be, is based on, when we go back and try to analyze this, the messaging fell somewhere. It was not consistent. And so it didn't help meet that sales goal that Sumit had, right? It didn't move the needle, right? And so he's going to look at this from a sales perspective and say, well, I'm not spending a dime on that next year, right? But it wasn't for lack of the data being real with you. The data was being real. It went back to the communication piece. It was the message that failed, right? And so really getting strategic around how your messaging is synchronized across multiple platforms is totally critical. Two of the really important things that you touched on are budget and process.
Right.
And those are things that most marketing individuals, whether you are the CEO of a company or you're an advertising rep in an agency, you're not necessarily always thinking about those things. But you're right. When it comes down to it, the budget is going to drive a lot of that, right? And it's fascinating to hear you say, oh, sales is at 17%, right? I mean, that's a massive number when you really stop and think about it. And marketing is maybe 1 or 2%. So what's going on here? Why is there this chasm in better understanding how to partner with marketing? Not use it. I don't want to be used. I want to partner with you, right? Right. I'm not that going back to the vendor idea, right? I'm not a vendor. And then the process piece, right? It's okay. Well, what's the process that really works? Is it a quick project here and there? That doesn't work. Come on, let's be real. That doesn't really work. A project effort here or there is a Band-Aid approach to anything in marketing. It's not going to be as successful as it could be or should be. So if you think strategically around a project, whether it's increasing sales for a specific sector of your business, or the educational outreach component of a nonprofit organization that you're involved with, whatever it might be, if you're more strategic and say, okay, this is long-term growth. Because short-term growth can be motivated in other ways, but to really tap the power of marketing, we're going to think long-term. That's why our agency doesn't do anything under a 1-year agreement with any clients, right? PR, I would say marketing in general is not a tactic, it's a process. And if you treat that process with utmost respect and really partner with that process, watch out, because magic can happen.